Today we're going to be changing the drive shaft and bearing carrier in a 2015 Polaris Ranger 570 full-size crew. You're going to start out by removing this skid pan underneath so we can get a little bit better view. To remove this skid pan, we're going to need a 10mm socket and an impact driver or ratchet. Impact driver will be faster. So we're going to get this thing taken out of here. There was 10 bolts holding the skid pan on. And right here, you can see the old bearing carrier and the drive shaft. That's what we're going to be taking out of here. Alright, next, I'm going to take out these screws and the push pins and remove this section so we can see the bearing carrier from the top. Alright, I got both the skid pans out. This is the rear skid pan and this is the front side of it, faces the front of the machine. And this is the front skid pan that covers the drive shaft. This is the front end of it. This goes towards the front of the machine. There was actually 9 bolts that hold this front narrow piece on and 7 that hold the rear piece on. So this is the 9 for the long narrow piece and this is the 7 for the wide short piece. All these bolts have a 10mm head on them. Alright, next I've removed the rear seat, these 2 storage bins, one from the passenger side, one from the driver's side. The middle compartment here houses all your electronics, computer and fuse panel. I'm going to take out this star head bolt, each one on all 4 corners. This particular machine, the center piece here doesn't come out alone, so I'm going to have to remove the rear floorboards to be able to get top access to the bearing carrier. Doesn't look like it'll be too hard. A few push pins and several star head bolts. One back here, push pin on the bottom down there. Hopefully it won't be too bad. I'll let you know in a few minutes. Push pin here and a push pin here on each side. Bolt here, nothing in this hole. Bolt, bolt, bolt. Alright, I got the floor out. The hardest part to get out is there's a push pin in each side here, one on the other side. Those are the hardest part to get out. The bolts come out easy. The gas tank's on this side, so you just loosen all these bolts, pull this back out the way slightly, and then you can lift the whole floor out of here pretty easily. Again, you want to take all this loose because the floor is underneath. And what I'll do is I'll just push this back into place, put a couple bolts in there to hold it so nothing gets broken. I think what I'm going to do is take a little break and I'm going to go and clean all this out, get all this mud out that you can't typically access, and then I'll start taking the drive shaft out. Alright, we got everything cleaned out pretty good. Cleaned all this up while I was at it. Got the battery cleaned up, everything rinsed out. good opportunity to do all that. Next, we're going to take this bearing carrier out. It's going to be 15 millimeter. Get you over here, we can see this other side. 15 millimeter. We'll separate that bearing carrier. Get you a good shot of it. To the left, that's the rear section of the drive shaft. To the right, it's the front section. Alright, got both bolts out of the bearing carrier. They were extremely tight. Had to use a cheater wrench and a pry bar to get the one on the driver's side loose. Not really a lot of room in there to get an impact in there. Tried a 90-degree angle style impact, and it was too much downward pressure from this stuff up above, and it wouldn't break the bolt loose. So some box end wrenches and a cheater bar, get them loose. Next, I'm gonna pull this passenger side front tire off. We got a pin in here in the drive shaft that we have to drive out and get the front loose. You can kind of see it up towards the front, just underneath the steering boot. But we'll get this tire out of the way and take another look. Alright, got the passenger side front tire off. Right there is the pin, roll pin we need to drive out. I got to replace this boot here, so I may go ahead and take the steering rod loose, or tire rod loose, and anyway, may make it, we'll push that up out of the way. You got to replace the boot anyway, push it up out the way, and maybe it'll make it easier to get to that pin. This is what I got set up to extend my punch. It's a 20-inch, half-inch long extension, 10 millimeter impact socket, and then my punch fits that really nice, and a small sledgehammer. I'm going to try to drive out that pin. Alright guys, this is what I used to get started. The flat punches, they wouldn't work, and it was just bouncing all around on the pin. So I got the center punch with a little bit of point on it, until I got the pin driven in a little beyond flush with the edge of the U-joint here. And as you can see, I got it driven in there pretty good ways. I'm going to finish punching it out. Hopefully it won't be too big a deal to get it the rest of the way out of there, but now the flat punch fits in there nice, and get a pretty good drive on it. Alright, got it out of there. Wasn't too hard, just had to be a little creative, have a lot of patience. Once you get it started, it tends to go on out of there pretty easily. Maybe took a total of 5 minutes to get the pin out. This is what the pin looks like once you get it out of there. I'm going to hold on to it. I'm pretty sure my new drive shaft came with a new pin also. The drive shaft I'm putting in here is a Rhino brand. It comes from Super ATV. It's supposed to be a balanced drive shaft. The factory drive shafts are not balanced, but supposedly they hold up a lot better than just changing the U-joints in the factory drive shaft. Alright, we're back up under the machine now. You can see here in these crew cab buggies, side by sides, you have multiple pieces that you have to take out. You got the front section, then from the bearing carrier back, you have the rear section. This is the point focusing on right now. We're going to try to get the front shaft to go forward the back shaft to go backwards and see if we can get one of these two pieces loose and hopefully get it out of there. All right, up here on the front, I got everything loose from the front all the way to the back, bearing carrier, roll pins out here. Took a small pry bar, just lightly bumped on the front of the shaft here, and it popped right off. So didn't have to loosen the front differential or anything to gain any extra room. Polaris gave you enough room to shift that prop shaft back and get it off of the front differential. All right, here we're looking at the front of the machine. You see the front differential up there. Gonna slide this shaft over here toward the driver's side, shove it forward as far as it'll go, and let's see, I'm gonna pull. Well, may have to put the phone down, but anyway, so we're gonna shift this forward. I don't know if you see that this thing can move a lot here. We're gonna shift it all the way forward, and then we're gonna separate it at these two joints. All right, I know this is extremely close, but these are your two joints. There's your bearing carrier. There's your spline and shaft. This is the front prop shaft here, going up all the way to the front differential. And then back here, we have the longer rear prop shaft. This off. So now we just got to get it off of the transmission in the back. All right, the rear is now off of the transmission. All I had to do was grab this just behind the bearing carrier and push toward the front. I've got the front drive shaft just kind of pulled over here out of the way for now. Now I will slide this drive shaft back and work on getting one of the two of the drive shafts out. So this is all loose back here now. I don't know if you can see in there, but it's all loose. All right, front drive shaft, I was able to pull it back kind of over here. This would be the passenger side rear floorboard. I was able to pull it over to this side, slide it back a little bit, and get it to drop down out of the front. There's the front differential. There's the drive shaft. It looks like it will go ahead, slide right on out of the way. So now I just need to get the rear out. I don't know if I can bring the rear all the way up and through that same place where I brought the front out, but if I can, I'll come back on and let you guys know. All right, so what I did here is took a screwdriver, I pried the rear rubber out of the housing here, and then I went around to the front and pried the front rubber out of the housing. So now this housing's loose. I can take and just turn it sideways, pull it out, and now hopefully I can slide this drive shaft all the way to the front. Alright, so this is the rear prop shaft, and I was able to work it and get it out of the front fairly easily. I think if you're not going to reuse the little rubber donut, which I'm not going to, it'd probably been easier just to go ahead and cut that off or pry it off than to fight it to get it out of there, but it'll eventually go all the way out the front. So that's the drive shaft completely out of there from the front all the way to the back. Alright, so this is what it looks like with the drive shaft out of the machine. The short one here is your front drive shaft, long one's your rear. It's your bearing carrier housing, rubber bearing carrier boot. I'm not going to take any of this apart because I'm going to be installing this new one that I got from Super ATV. This is the new bearing carrier squeezable balance prop shafts. When I take them out of the box, I'll lay them beside the factory ones and give you a side-by-side comparison. Alright, here's a side-by-side comparison of the front and rear prop shaft. I don't know if you can tell how much bigger around, how much beefier the Rhino brand prop shaft is than the bearing carrier. This is the rear prop shaft. A little bit closer here, you might get see the difference. By the way, I don't mud bog on this machine or really play in the mud. I got some decently aggressive tires on here. I strictly hunt off this machine and just ride. It doesn't mean it doesn't go through mud, but I don't intentionally go mud bogging on it. This machine has about 6,500 miles on it, and the universal joints were pretty worn. The ones in the center where the two drive shafts, prop shafts connect together, those were good, but at the transmission end and the front differential end, they were pretty sloppy. While I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead and I need to replace both front drive axles and the passenger side steering boot. This side by side has power steering, electronic power steering, so that boot's got a little tear and I'm going to replace that. I got a few other things I'm going to replace on here. Already been through and replaced all the wheel bearings, but if you look at this, you can see where these things are weighted to help them spin a little bit more true, give you a little less wear on your universal joints. These tires are ITP Mega Mayhem. They actually ride pretty good, but anything below 15 miles an hour, they're pretty rough, and you can feel a lot of vibration at higher speeds. They ride smooth, but there is a lot of vibration. I think that's probably maybe causing some premature wear on some of my parts, but say what place where I hunt at, we got some swampy areas. Never had this machine stuck. Been in some pretty bad spots where trucks have been stuck and it just goes right on through. If you don't do a lot of riding in swampy areas though, I would not go with this kind of tire. I would get something that's a little more a little better for riding on roads and stuff like that. This one, like I say, you can feel the machine kind of shimmy as you're driving because it's sort of like a tractor tire. But other than that, the tires have been really good. Alright, so before you try to put the drive shaft back in, there's a push pin in this hole here, and this little tray supports your coolant lines. So you can get about an inch worth of lift once you pull that pin out. Do that before you try to put a new drive shaft in, if you're going with something other than the factory drive shaft, like a beefier, the Super ATV prop shaft, sorry. Alright, and I put the new prop shaft in the exact same way I took the old one out. Back piece came in first. This is the front of the machine. Came right through here. And then, like I say, you can lift up on this tray and it gives you enough room for the larger diameter drive shaft to come through, because now you'll have this bearing on the end for the bearing carrier. And then bring your front shaft in. Don't connect it here yet. Bring it in and bypass the back shaft slightly enough to get the front shaft up into this area. Then you're able to slide the front shaft forward towards the gear case, and then you can make this connection. Once you make that connection, then you're able to lift this into position. You have to align your roll pin hole. We'll go out there and do that in a minute, but anyway, you'll align your roll pin, and at that point you'll slide the front drive shaft on and put your roll pin in. Alright guys, once you get everything put together underneath, I'm going to put this front prop shaft back on the front differential and get your hole lined up for your roll pin. I'm doing this by myself. It's not terribly complicated. Just take some patience, and once you get it up there, now you just drive the roll pin back in. And if you're not replacing anything else at this point, you'll put all the skid pans and everything at the rear floorboard back in, and tire back on. Of course, you'll be finished, but this project for me is going to keep on going. Going to replace these axles like I mentioned before, on both sides of the front. Got a little popping noise going on when I turn hard. It pops when I put in 4-wheel drive. But that's about it for this prop shaft, other than putting the skid pan back on and floorboard back in. I got a new roll pin with the drive shaft. Didn't really like the way it looked. It was trying to peel or mushroom out. It has a tapered end, and the tapered end was trying to mushroom out, so I just used the factory roll pin, and it was still in good shape. So anyway, drive shaft's back together up front, and now I just got to do the bearing carrier. It's probably gonna be hard to see because it got dark, but here's the new bearing carrier. It's not a whole lot of instructions, or no instructions come with the bearing carrier or the new prop shaft, but the bearing carrier itself installs upside down on this machine. A few videos out there from Super ATV, but they don't show any for this machine. But the grease cert, if you're installing it, will go down towards the ground. And that's about it. I'm about to go test drive it. I got the front tire back on. Anyway, if I find any problems, I'll let you know. There's the new carrier bearing, prop shaft carrier bearing, and the grease cert is actually pointing at the ground. There's on the 570, there's a frame support in your way. Had to modify it a little bit, drill some holes in it so I could get to the bolts to bolt the bearing carrier together, and had to drill a larger hole to be able to grease the bearing carrier. But anyway, it installs upside down. The grease cert points towards the ground. Leave me a comment if you got any questions. Today we're going to be changing the drive shaft and bearing carrier in a 2015 Polaris Ranger 570 full-size crew. You're gonna start out by removing this skid pan underneath so we can get a little bit better view. To remove this skid pan, we're gonna need a 10mm socket and an impact driver or ratchet. Impact driver will be faster. So we're gonna get this thing taken out of here. There was 10 bolts holding the skid pan on. And right here, you can see the old bearing carrier and the drive shaft. That's what we're gonna be taking out of here. All right, next, I'm gonna take out these screws and the push pins and remove this section so we can see the bearing carrier from the top. All right, I got both the skid pans out. This is the rear skid pan and this is the front side of it, faces the front of the machine. And this is the front skid pan that covers the drive shaft. This is the front end of it. This goes towards the front of the machine. There was actually 9 bolts that hold this front narrow piece on and 7 that hold the rear piece on. This is the 9 for the long narrow piece and this is the 7 for the wide short piece. All these bolts have a 10mm head on them.